Pokemon games look like shit, and I want to know why. Cards, cafes, stores, toys, plushies, apparel, movies, anime, home goods, stationery, snacks, food, glue sticks, shampoos, this thing. Game Freak have their grubby little hands in literally everything. And when I say Game Freak, yes, I mean Game Freak. Dating back to 1996, Blue and Red are the first instance of the existence of the entity that is Pokemon. And guess who created and owned it at the time? That's right, Game Freak. Or more accurately, Satoshi Tajiri and Ken Sugimori. In 1998, 2 years later, Game Freak, Nintendo, and Creatures, the company that made the Pokemon trading card game, came together and co-founded the Pokemon Company. Since then and to this day, each of those three companies own 33% of the franchise that is Digimon. Sorry, Pokemon. Arguably one of the most advantageous business transactions of all time, with Pokemon now being, say it with me everybody, the world's largest franchise, about to top $100 billion in revenue. That's almost double of the next highest franchise in Disney and exactly 50 NBA Jams. So I ask you, once again, and not for the last time, why do the games look like shit? They are the main thing that is Pokemon. The cards, merch, and anime, they all draw inspiration from each new video game release. The animes are animated beautifully. Even the spin-off underfunded animes like Pokemon Concierge, which has been highly praised for its cheerful atmosphere and its visuals. And I should know, I've watched it twice and I cried both times. Even the Pokemon cards, some of them look so beautiful that people take them and they put them in protective little tiny glass houses. And it's funny because those same people, when you mention how bad the games look, will start throwing stones in those same tiny glass houses. So can we have an honest conversation about why everything else Pokemon branded is of such high quality and production, but the video games are a laughingstock outside of the Pokemon fandom community? Yeah, pause. I'm gonna stop you right there, buddy. This video is sponsored by Nixie, and if you can believe it, I've been looking at Switch accessories for almost a decade, and these joypads are easily some of the best third-party accessory for the Switch that I think I've ever seen. I was immediately blown away by the quality of all their products, both in the way they shipped them to me that had really nice packaging. They sent me pretty much their whole product range, including this GameCube-inspired keyboard. You can clearly tell this company cares a lot about the way their buttons feel and sound across all their products. 22 different RGB lighting modes, and I found some user-created modes in the app. The keys are hot swappable, and this little dot matrix screen up here, you can program it so easily. I threw the U Joy-Cons from my logo on mine. Moving on from there, they also do a wireless controller. This thing feels like an Xbox Elite controller, but you can use it on the Switch and PC and Android and iOS. You know, sometimes like button layouts can get confusing, like Xbox and Switch, they look different. Well, guess what? You pop off the faceplate, you can just move those suckers around wherever you want. So that thing is awesome. And then we take a look at the Hyperion 2 wireless joypads. They have such a nice ergonomic design that makes it really comfortable to hold. You have programmable back buttons, Hall effect sticks for zero drift. All of those clicks are so satisfying and addictive and crisp. I can't get enough of them. They have 6-axis gyro motion sensing. They also have removable faceplates. These RGB lights are so easy to change. This one, you just press one button and then you can scroll along to change the colors. This is a hell of a way to spruce up your Switch 1 if you plan to keep playing it. There'll be a link down below for Nixie and all these products. Go check them out. Thank you, Nixie, for sponsoring, and thank you guys for supporting my sponsors when I have them. Okay, yeah, you keep talking. What is it? Pokemon sucks? Man, this guy doesn't shut up. You know, I heard he skipped all the story in Arceus. Personally, I'm excited for the new game. They brought back Tepig. Pokemon fans will give you 100 excuses when you bring this up about how as long as the games are fun, yeah, the visuals don't matter. Yeah, I mean, that is inherently true. I mean, look at Witcher 3, the Switch version. That is and always has been Nintendo's own mentality. You know, as long as the game is fun, doesn't matter what it looks like. But how long are we going to use that Nintendo expression to excuse poor game development? Pokemon Legends Z. Oh, don't you leave that comment.
Oh, but Game Freak are doing their bestest westest, and the game, it's not even out yet.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure that impression of you definitely prevented the comment you were about to leave. It's not just about Z and A. It's about Game Freak's approach to video game development since they made the switch to the Switch. So we have a lot to look at. And in the words of Ash Ketchum himself,
you can't undo what's already been done, but you can face up to it.
That's an actual quote. See, I did research. You didn't believe me. I gotta get ahead of this a little bit because I have talked about Pokemon graphics a bunch here on this channel, on my podcast, and whenever I bring it up, people often say the same things. And one of them is, he's not a true Pokemon fan. He skipped all the dialogue in Arceus, so you can't take his opinion seriously. I'm not sure how skipping this very bloated story correlates to my eyes functioning, but it seems worth it to try and get ahead of this, so I'm gonna let you know now, I am actually a Pokemon fan. I'm not super hardcore, like I haven't made it my whole identity. I don't have a tattoo, I don't own a Lucario fursuit that I wear on weekends. Look, I wish I had both of those things. One of my first games was Red. Who could forget playing Gold as a kid? And so many others. In fact, I've played pretty much every mainline Pokemon game. Never played Black and White, because it was just that age where I was falling out of Pokemon before I decided to fall back in. And at this point now, I'm just waiting for a Black and White remake because everybody says it's the best one. The first time I went to Japan, half the stuff I brought back was Pokemon merchandise. We even made sure to get a reservation at the Pokemon Cafe, and let me tell you, when Chef Pikachu came waddling out to ask me if I liked the meal he cooked, I almost wept like a baby. It was so wholesome. What I'm trying to say is I do love Pokemon. But if you were to put a gun to my head and ask me to name a single character in any Pokemon game outside of Professor Oak and my mom, you may as well pull the trigger. You think when I was a kid playing Red for the first time, I gave 2 squirts of piss about the story? No, I was too busy gambling on slots for a Polygon and riding up and down this one shoreline because I wanted 100 Master Balls. Hell, while I was scripting this video, Kim sent me a text saying she just woke up from a nap dreaming about an old Pokemon toy she had where the Mewtwo had tits. We're locked in on Pokemon. Why does it have tits? I'm making this video because I do care. Because 25 million people is a lot of people to buy a video game. But a lot more people bought games like Breath of the Wild and Animal Crossing. And Zelda isn't even in that Wikipedia list of top grossing franchises, which means, yes, it's below NBA Jam. And remember when Breath of the Wild came out and no one would shut up about it, how it was a new, breathtaking, innovative, jaw-dropping, inspiring new video game? Don't we want that from something like Pokemon? I feel like these games always get a pass because they manage to sell so much, but it should be higher, shouldn't it? We as fans, do we not want the Breath of the Wild of Pokemon? Or are we content with the... Okay, this guy's making some incredible points, and he has me completely sold, but I actually just watched his last podcast episode where he said some of this stuff in the episode. One of the top comments was, the games only make up 10% of Pokemon's total revenue, which... fan of the podcast, and I love him. I love that they left this comment because it also allowed me to get ahead of this one because what the piss? 10% of $100 billion, by the way, is still around $10 to $15 billion just for the video games, which is a whole Grand Theft Auto franchise. And I would just like to remind you again, something I've already said, the merch, the anime, the new cards, all of the new merch, those come from the video games. So if the video games currently are only making 10% of the revenue, imagine if we made the video games, good. That would then trickle down to all the new merch, plushies, and all of that, and boost those revenue and sales even more. I guess I just don't understand the argument that the Pokemon company makes too much money to try or bother with the video games anymore, when the video games are still making more money than 99% of the rest of the gaming industry. All right. Anyway, back to this chump. Let me get to the point. I know Pokemon fans hate when other Pokemon fans complain about how the Pokemon games look. And if you try complaining this time around about how Pokemon Z and A look, they'll say, but it looks so much better than Scarlet and Violet. And well, yeah, but that's a really low bar. And Game Freak are the ones that set that bar. This game isn't anywhere near the industry standard and looks worse than anything else Nintendo is doing, which is already being scrutinized for being behind the times. Saying that this is better than the previous amounts of terrible is like going to your job every day and just intentionally being the worst you could be, just messing everything up, the worst employee this company has. But then like a year later, you actually start trying and you do a little bit better and expect to be praised for being slightly less shit. You could pick just about any first-party Nintendo game and compare it to ZA, even the soon-to-be re-released Wii U game, Xenoblade X, and it would be clear that this is not a Switch hardware issue, but an issue of a developer who is struggling to create games post the 3DS. So let's not do that. Let's not compare it to those other Nintendo games. Let's do what Pokemon fans like to do and only compare it to Pokemon's own games. A nice little echo chamber for us to play around in and see how our voice sounds. Hello? Hello? We saw in Scarlet and Violet that Game Freak struggles to create competent game worlds that aren't full of glitches, bugs, and low-resolution textures, terrible frame rates, and assets stuck together with spaghetti and crazy glue. You just blink at this game wrong and you'll be falling through the floor. But I think the biggest offender here is that resolution. At the time, fans said, well, at least it looks better than Sword and Shield. However, comparing Scarlet and Violet to the Pokemon ZA trailer, the new game does look a lot better at first glance. Now, I want to say to Game Freak's credit, looking back at their other Pokemon reveal trailers, all these trailers seem to be rendered within the game. They hide absolutely nothing about the way that their games look and play. So that gives us a very good, trustworthy bar that Pokemon Z and A is an in-game rendered trailer running on the hardware. And if this is true, I will say they've done a fantastic job at fixing resolutions and draw distances. All those jagged edges are completely gone. And I think that's why people look at these two images and think that this new one is so much better. But how did they do that? I think it's pretty clear if you really look at this, specifically the buildings, a way they managed to bring down those jagged edges is by just not having anything that would create a jagged edge. They've flattened out almost every texture and model, specifically all these very similar looking buildings throughout the city. In all three of the other Pokemon games on the Switch, Game Freak designed the buildings with intent and purpose. The architectural designs of the buildings, they had depth. They had balconies, awnings, brick, window sills, glass textures, concaves, you know, like intentional designs, man. Scarlet and Violet, for example, was set in Spain, and they clearly took those buildings as inspiration and went to work sculpting them, and they would look beautiful if you could see them through the jank. But you know, at least the thought was there. Here, almost every building has the same window, just Control-C and Control-V'd all over it. It's honestly giving Lego. I mean, they're just rectangles with stickers stuck to the front. It's also the same tactic they did use in Scarlet and Violet for the environments, and I broke this down in my review of that game. They took one small section of texture and just copy-pasted it everywhere, hoping you wouldn't look at it for 2 seconds and accidentally notice. Incredibly lazy game development, and completely voids all personality and life from a city that's based on a city that is so filled with personality and life. Despite some people thinking that this is Tokyo Tower, it's actually the Eiffel Tower. And this city bears resemblance to the city of Paris. In fact, if you take yourself on Google Street View and you plop yourself right about here, I think I found the street that the trailer is actually set on, which is pretty cool. And credit to Game Freak that I managed to do that and then I could tell what they were going for. But where Paris had these beautiful iron metal balconies, in Game Freak's rendition of that, they have these beautiful iron metal balcony JPEGs. What? I'm actually quite speechless. This is not the way they did it in any of the other games. This is new. And also, Game Freak, by your own logic, if you were just going to copy paste it, you could have just made one balcony and then copy pasted that a bazillion times. Why this? I don't think they're even that lazy. I think there is something else going on here. In Scarlet and Violet, despite how intentional those buildings were, from a distance, or really even up close, but definitely from a distance, they look like the low resolutions and lack of any kind of anti-aliasing. They shimmer and shine, but like in the worst way. So Game Freak, not knowing how to fix this very basic issue, found yet another gameplay development workaround for Pokemon Z and A. Flat, lifeless buildings with a picture of what a nice building could look like glued to the front. Now you might say, does it really matter, Wood, what a building looks like in a video game? And I would say yes. If it looks like this, I'm gonna say something. But also, this whole game is set in a city. When you go to New York City and you want to take in the sights, what do you look at? Is it the rats in the street? Is it the weird people dancing on the train that you try really hard not to make eye contact with because you're scared? No. It's the buildings. I'm gonna be looking at these the whole time I play, and they look like this, but some of them have some sort of depth to them. But clearly this is also just one window design that has been copy and pasted several times. What are these windows supposed to be? Or even the ones next to them? Like, I don't really know what I'm looking at. But what I do know is my favorite kind of balcony JPEG is the balcony JPEG that has a flower JPEG on top of it. I mean, that just really ties the room together. But not a single window in this entire trailer has any kind of reflection at all, or presents itself as an actual window. They all just look like Game Freak Googled the word blue and used the first thing that came up in Google image results. Even these huge shop windows, which if we go back and we look at the actual Paris street, you can see a lot of these buildings have little storefronts under them. So this would be a really nice opportunity to fill this storefront window with a store. But nope. Just a JPEG. We even get a close-up of this building as we climb all the way up like the world's ugliest elevator. They're using a JPEG for the whole building, but they couldn't even use a high-quality JPEG. Like, they couldn't even render in the JPEG. Who is designing these? Oh, at least it looks better than the other Pokemon games, does it? Does it? Because 6 years ago in Sword and Shield, the windows actually had reflections. They weren't true reflections. They didn't actually reflect anything that was happening, but it was serviceable and it got the point across. And honestly, looks pretty nice. But I guess this is yet another way that Game Freak found to pare down development, because they even did away with those in Scarlet and Violet. In fact, the only window I could find in the entire Scarlet and Violet game, and I had to ride around that sucker for way too long, by the way, I forgot how janky it was this one. And I don't even understand what the hell is going on up there. It's just very confusing. Yeah, hi, me again. Sorry, I'm filming this in the future after I recorded a ton more gameplay for Scarlet and Violet. I actually didn't remember how bad this truly was. These characters popping in and out seemingly at random. It's not even distance based. And by the way, when I say disappear, I literally mean disappear. You can't go and find them again. They're just erased from the game. This video isn't supposed to be about Scarlet and Violet, but my god. Also, I was recording footage for the video and I saw this, and I never noticed this before, but it's because I'm so obsessed with Windows right now. Another cheap tactic that Game Freak does in their game is they have this placeholder unrendered in city that looks terrible from a distance, but the placeholder city doesn't have lights in the windows. So when you get a little closer to the city, it pops and fully renders in the actual city, and because it's night, the lights all just turn on. They didn't even make an unrendered in version with lights on for the nighttime. Because why bother? But that window and subsequently the building that it's attached to brings me to another very good point. All three of these games have something in common. Well, graphics. So I guess two things. They all have one nice building. Each game has a central location building that looks night and day better than any other structure in the game. Like in Scarlet and Violet, it was the school, which looked fantastic. And then in Arceus, it was whatever that big building was in the village that they did stuff in. I don't know. I skipped the story. And my assumption here is that it's a tactic to kind of trick our brains into thinking the game actually looks nicer than it does, because the building that you might have gone to most frequently actually didn't look that bad. And for example, in Pokemon ZNA, we get in this trailer a shot of the main character picking out of the 3 Pokemon, and there is this, quite frankly, gorgeous structure behind him. Just wonderful stonework, designs, there's arches, there's depth, vines and grass. There's possibly even a reflective window in this sucker. This clearly demonstrates that Game Freak can design buildings like this. They don't though. They either just, I guess, don't care about the rest of the game, or maybe they don't have the time, maybe they're being rushed, or maybe it's all of these extra designs and details just makes the game look a little worse because it's more things to render. I mean, God forbid we render in a JPEG of a building, let alone an actual building. They don't want to bog the game down with anything that might hurt the overall presentation. A great example here of what I'm looking for, bare minimum, from these games is to look at Scarlet and Violet again, but in 4K. The low resolution of this game on the Switch is not the Switch's fault. These games are very basic. It's just that Game Freak doesn't know how to optimize or build a 3D world. That's not a controversial thing to say. We've seen it countless times in other games on the console, and I know the console can't do 4K, but this is what the game looks like when you fix the resolution. Oh, that didn't really help my point. No, I'm kidding. It's a night and day difference. And you can see what they designed. And this is probably what it actually looked like on their end when they made the game on a PC before they had to scale it down somehow for the Switch. So rather than trying to figure this out, they just took out anything in the game that would look bad in low resolution rather than fixing the resolution. If you look at the streets of Pokemon ZNA as a whole, it gets its point across and you get what they're going for. But as soon as you look at any one element on its own, the flaws start to show. The fact that they still can't design anything with a high enough poly count to actually make it round, that no NPC in this game has a shadow. And that goes for most objects too, except this awning. Based on everything else in this picture, why does it even have a shadow? Yeah, I just wanted to take one more look at this awning with you guys. Why is it here? There's plenty of shop fronts, even in this same image and other images, that don't have awnings. What is the point of the awning? Why is it only on 3 of the 5 windows? What is it covering? There's no tables, there's no chairs. Also, why is the awning like half a millimeter thick? One gust of wind and that sucker's gone. When Sword and Shield revealed and I had an issue with the trees, I became the tree guy for a minute. Everyone was like, what is the problem with the trees? Who cares about the trees? I feel like this time I'm going to be the window guy or the awning guy, crashing out over windows and an awning. And once again, it does seem like NPCs are incapable of moving around the game world. They just stand there lifelessly. I mean, this was the case in Pokemon Arceus as well. Even 60 hours into my playthrough, this old lady is still sweeping that one spot. I'm sorry, honey, if it ain't clean now, it probably ain't gonna be. In Scarlet and Violet, there were some characters that had animations, like a little jig, and it looks like all those have been stripped out. And then there were even a few NPCs that would walk around. But due to the game having absolutely terrible draw distances and crazy pop in and pop out, those characters would disappear and reappear like ghosts. And Game Freak, rather than try and figure out how to not have that happen, decided to glue their feet to the ground tighter than they glued the JPEGs to the buildings. Of course, that one is an assumption because they haven't played the full game. Maybe they do move around. A lot of this is based on just the trailer, and I feel like some people are gonna say, well, you haven't even played the full game yet. And again, this trailer is rendered in game. I'm assuming based on all their other trailers, and this is what they've shown us, and I'm literally only talking about what I'm seeing in this trailer. I'm sure I'll find a whole piss of things once I start playing the game to complain about. But why wait? How about the absolutely no ground animations for these sand dials who look more like they're glitching through the floor than swimming through the dirt? This few second shot right here is absolutely insane to me. The Pokemon and the people are fully rendered in, but nothing else in the shot is. The floor is blurry, the brick is blurry, and that's before we even talk about the fact this is a moving shot, and every frame of the animation has the floor down here glitching on the wall, and this is what they chose to show us? And don't get me wrong, the Pokemon look fantastic, the moves and the animations of that, the battling, really flashy. I even like the way the UI looks. It's sleek, it's nice. And some people will say, it's a Legends game. It's a spin-off of the main series. It's not supposed to look as nice. But then that goes against the people that are saying that it looks better than Scarlet and Violet, which was a main series game. So which is it? Arceus used a more cel-shaded style of visual, which I think actually helped hide a lot of the imperfections. When that game came out, I don't think I really even complained about the way the game looked. I actually kind of liked it. This new Legends game, though, has seemingly dropped that, and they've moved towards the more mainline series art direction. It's not cel-shaded. You know, I struggle to call this realistic, but I guess you know what I mean. And this game, at face value, does look better than Scarlet and Violet. Again, because they stripped out anything and made everything flat to trick your brain into thinking that it actually does look good when it really doesn't. But there are some things, to be fair, that legitimately do look a lot nicer. The inside of buildings here have a much more warm and high-resolution feel, like it feels cozy. I took some examples from other games set in similar office-style buildings. It's very clear that the new one doesn't look as bad. Another thing that stood out to me immediately is the grass textures. I don't think the grass in ZNA looks particularly pleasant, but you compare it to Scarlet and Violet, and what were they thinking? It's like a sea of Lamborghini green. Like, it is neon. It's probably as green as the green screen I'm standing on. Put me in the grass, Zach. Hello! This was a whole-ass game we were handed just a few years ago that we all paid $60 for, complete with 12 FPS gameplay and more bugs than under a rock in my garden. I guess if ZA is good enough to make people finally look back at Scarlet and Violet and realize that they were ripped off in 2022, I mean, I'll take it. I made a video about that game and people were equally upset with me for that. I feel like throughout this video, I've been really trying to get ahead of anything that people will try to say to invalidate my opinion that the game looks bad. And I do feel like it's a losing battle. I mean, on my podcast recently, I pointed out that the games still look pretty rough. And one of the top comments said I was wrong and that they actually really like the way the game looks so far because Tech Pig is back. And yeah, he is. People even calling me a snob, that I'm moving the goalpost for Game Freak. I'm not sure where the goalpost is for Game Freak in my mind, but I'm telling you now, they've never even been in the same zip code as that motherfucker. I can't say it's better than before. I will concede to at least it being different. And it is different. This is not how they've ever designed buildings before. That is very different. But in doing that, they have managed to clean up the resolutions and that weird jank that we saw in previous games, and some people might actually prefer that trade-off. But I'm just here asking, in 2025, why can we not have both? I'll apologize for this, but sometimes I wonder if it's me, my ADHD, or whatever is wrong with me mentally, where I hyperfixate on something. But when I look at these buildings, or if you want to call these textures, or this face mask, you know, I get offended. I can't help but stare at them the whole time, and they're just preventing me from being able to fully immerse myself in the experience and feel like that 10-year-old boy that would just want to go around catching Pokemon and ignoring everything the adults are saying, which I still do even now in real life. I ignore everything people are. That's probably it's ADHD. Ultimately, if the game is fun, I agree the game is fun, but I can't help but feel gaslit that this is acceptable game development from Game Freak at at this point, there is no reason for their games not to be in a better place, not to be in the same or better place than games like Mario, Zelda, Pikmin, Xenoblade, or any other Nintendo IP. Stubbornness. It has to be. It's focusing in on that tight release window, since despite the games being the main source of fandom, the merchandise is where the real money is. It honestly, it feels like we're being taken advantage of. It offends me. Does it not offend you? Are you not offended? They just take advantage of Pokemon fans, knowing full well they can phone in the games and will buy them anyway because it's Pokemon. You love Pokemon, right? Why don't you buy this Wiglet plushie and this Victory Bell plushie, and please don't, whatever you do, don't combine them. There is 200 people working at Game Freak, which prospectively is not a lot of people. Studios like Rockstar, Naughty Dog, Bethesda, they have thousands of employees. I think Game Freak should be on these studios' level, if not a little higher. But we don't want to muddy the waters with all of these employees. Like thousands, that's too much. I understand and I respect keeping a team small. But 200 at this point might be a bit too small, don't you think? But even Xenoblade's developer Monolith Studios has 300 developers, and their games only sell a couple million units. Pokemon sells over 20 million. Something's not adding up. And Xenoblade, with even just 100 extra people, manages to make games that look like this. It's almost like having some extra people on board helped. And it's not just beautiful visuals that the Xenoblade team are putting together either. It's crazy over-the-top animated cutscenes and full voice acting. Breath of the Wild also had a 300-person team, and it took them 4 years to make that game. Mario Odyssey had 360 people that took them 3 years to make that game. Game Freak is understaffed, but they are in no way underfunded. I want to touch on something I said earlier, and that's that people always say, well, the games still sell. And yes, they still sell. They're one of the best-selling game franchises of all time. But when you look at the franchise prospectively and how many millions, if not a billion people love the property and the franchise that is Pokemon, why aren't more people buying the games? Yeah, 20 million's a lot. So's 40 million. So's 50. You know, if some of these other franchises like Animal Crossing can break 50, something that most people probably didn't even know what that was when New Horizons came out, why can't the world's largest franchise that literally any grandma could probably point at a Pikachu and say its name, why are they only selling 20 million? Maybe because the games actually aren't that good. It's just that a lot of us are holding on to a dream. I've played Pokemon throughout the generations, and ironically, as I've said before, they really struggle to evolve. We didn't even need great graphics back in the day. When I was a kid, it was black and white and little itty-bitty sprites, and I still had an absolute blast. But at this point, I would almost rather they just go back to doing sprites, because that's seemingly what they do best. Desperate for answers, I thought maybe ChatGPT would know, and I asked her. And the answer she gave me was so painfully, abundantly obvious that it was staring me straight in the face the whole time, and I just couldn't see it. This is what ChatGPT said.
Pokemon sells regardless of quality. Even when Pokemon games launch with issues, they still break record sales. Game Freak may not feel the need to expand drastically if their current model continues to be profitable. Scarlet and Violet sold over 22 million copies despite performance issues, so the financial incentive to increase staff significantly isn't there.
She then goes on to say,
could Game Freak expand? Yes, they could hire more developers to improve technical quality, but their collaborative approach, fast turnaround, and cost efficiency seem to be priorities over AAA scale productions. Unless Pokemon fans stop buying the games, Game Freak probably won't feel pressured to grow too much.
And she's right. I'm gonna buy the new game because I'm a giant hypocrite and I'm not part of the problem. I am the problem, but at least I can accept it. You know, I guess I could have just asked ChatGPT that to begin with and saved days of time writing this script, but I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to end this video and I'm gonna present it the way they wrote it. Plagiarism. Is it?
At the end of the day, Pokemon games may always look a little rough around the edges. But hey, as long as they keep selling like rare candies on the black market, Game Freak have no reason to change. So until the day that Pikachu's cheeks has RTX lighting and a wild Bidoof doesn't drop to 5 FPS, we'll just have to accept that the Pokemon franchise is the biggest in the world, running off of nostalgia and a dream. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what's the worst looking Pokemon moment that you've seen. I'll catch you in the next one.
Wow, that was actually pretty good. It's almost like I should be scared that my job is in jeopardy. Oh well.